Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we'll take a look at some new Am I the A-hole stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one posted by user Perry_Platypus 277. Titled, AITA for confronting my neighbors when a tree from their yard damaged our property? Background info, me, 14 female, my parents, 48 male and 46 female, neighbors, approximately 70 male and female. After a long night of lightning and rain, my dad walks outside to our backyard to find a giant tree from our neighbor's yard toppled onto our main cable line. If we didn't fix it soon, our power would have probably been cut off. So my dad goes next door and asks our neighbors if they could help us get this fixed, because it was their tree on our property. My dad wasn't even rude about it or anything, he just politely asked them if they could help us a little. Our neighbor then proceeds to give him a 10-minute lecture on how respect and responsibility yada 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 basically just refuses to help us get our power line fixed. So then my dad has to call an electrical company over and pay for the cost all with his own money. My neighbors didn't contribute a cent. Both my parents thinks they should have paid for the entire thing, since it was very clearly their tree that fell on our property, but they honestly would have been fine if my neighbors just paid half. So whatever, right? Yay, my neighbors are being entitled, I thought, until the electrical company came to fix the power line, and our neighbors had the audacity to complain about the noise. Our neighbors walk over to our house and complain the loud noise and how it's so annoying. After our neighbors left, my parents were literally fuming and were angry the rest of the day. The next day, I walked across to their house, and confronted them about being selfish, mean, entitled hags that act like toddlers. I basically explained how they were gigantic a-holes and demanded that they pay my parents back. My parents got pretty mad at me for doing that, because they said it was really disrespectful of me to shame people older than me. Anyway, they said they were disappointed in me and grounded me for 2 weeks. I didn't really care since it's not like I can really go anywhere now, but I was kinda upset that they were disappointed at me because as a teen that's one of the worst things to hear. I still think I'm right for confronting my neighbors, but AITA for disrespecting my elders like my parents said? User comment, no a-holes here. Your neighbors obviously are a-holes, but your parents, for whatever reason, decided not to confront them. You stepped out of line and confronted them, which is why your parents say they're disappointed in you. They're right to punish you mildly, it should be their call, and you should have gone along with their decision. But I bet they are also secretly proud of you. User comment, everyone sucks here. Your spirit was right and I appreciate your readiness to stand up for others. But anytime you go to confront someone on someone else's behalf, you need to stop and think it through multiple times. Why are they choosing not to confront the person? Do they want to reasonably avoid conflict? Are they planning a future, more strategic confrontation? Do they know about risks you don't know about it? That said, your parents' punishment seems too much to me. And your neighbors are needlessly dismissive and annoying. User comment, sorry but you're the a-hole here. The first year we moved into our house there was a hurricane and a healthy tree in our yard, no previous documentation of it as a hazard by either the previous homeowners or the neighbors, fell and slightly hit our neighbor's house knocking some shingles loose. Our insurance ruled it as an act of God and didn't pay our neighbor for the damages. We personally offered to help pay new neighbors after all, but he was super upset about how our insurance was handling it and decided to not accept our offer. So his insurance ended up taking care of it. Also, reconnecting a knocked service line is not something that I expect the average homeowner to know how to do. I feel like that's something that requires a professional. It's very possible that arguing with the neighbors would solve nothing and now your parents have to live next to them. Next one posted by user Shiri1432. Titled, WIBTA if I registered a noise complaint with our community for my neighbor yelling at her kids? Background, I live in a townhouse complex with fairly strict living terms and management and noise complaints are taken very seriously. Example, our downstairs neighbor was evicted for playing music too loud at night despite warnings. I also grew up in an abusive household, so aggressive yelling trigger me. My bedroom, where I spend lots of my time in the small apartment. It's where my desk and TV are, shares a wall with my next door neighbor's children. I'm not sure how many there are, we haven't actually met. However, it's a common occurrence, near daily, that there is a child screaming and crying in that room, oftentimes doing so pleading for their mother's attention for long stretches of time, around 20 minutes. The child sounds about 3 to 4. Not very articulate yet. And I also presume, not developed enough to have a long attention span and ready obedience to strict rules. The woman in the apartment, who I can only assume is the mother, will oftentimes react quite loudly and aggressively to the child, screaming back for them to stop screaming and punishing them, can't say how on this sub, until they stop. This is probably a daily occurrence. Most recent was just shortly, 12 a.m. estimate. My moral sticking point lies here. As someone who grew up in a similar environment, I don't want to have any complaints be deflected onto the child by the parent, resulting in their treatment getting worse if they do yell or cry loudly, and I don't want them being evicted from their home over this. I'm not close enough to the situation, I don't think, to call CPS. But WIBTA if I made a complaint about the screaming from my neighbor at her kids? Edit. Alright, so far the consensus seems to be that this is enough to call CPS, given my concern about not having enough for them to go on. Other people suggest having recordings of the screaming, and I'll get them if I can, and I'll be calling CPS as soon as possible. I will not be notifying property management with a noise complaint. Feel free to continue to weigh in. User comment, not the a-hole, and I'm sorry for you and for that child. If you are able, it makes sense to call CPS, you're close enough to the situation, just tell them what you told us, first. Even if CPS doesn't do anything, it will be good to have a file, and with a child that young mum likely won't blame child for the call. User comment, not the a-hole, but you should 100% call CPS. I've seen you say they don't do a great job, but so what? So you'll just do nothing, so there is literally zero chance of them getting help? User comment, not the a-hole. But you aren't here for a moral judgment, you're looking for someone to tell you where the dominoes will fall if you make the complaint. No one here can tell you anything you haven't already learned for yourself about this situation, and the painful answer is that truly we have no idea if this will improve things in the short term. In the long term? That requires intervention and support. And you aren't volunteering for that. Next one posted by user, the Cocoa Butter Queen. Titled, AITA for not telling my NF about my car troubles. I'm a nanny to a 5 female and 3 female. I have a pretty decent relationship with my nanny family and they generally treat me well. I've been working for them almost a year, and when we started the mother worked from home and the dad worked outside of the home, so I rarely interacted with him. I ended up catching a flat tire on the way to work and had to call in one day. I came in the next day and he asked me how everything went, to which I replied that I didn't really want to discuss. He replied that he's sorry and stated that if I'm not up for this, I could go home. I was confused by the statement because why would I drive all the way to work just to go home? I told him that the car was fine, which he can see as I drove to work and parked directly in front of the house, cue the large bay window that frames my car. He started to say that I didn't have to be so. Then his wife interjected and made a point about dismissiveness concerning the children. I couldn't for the life of me see how lack of communication concerning the children translates to lack of communication with this situation, as I clearly outlined I had a flat and would be back to work the following day. I'd think me driving the car would indicate said flat was repaired. It was becoming awkward and I said, "It's fine," and the conversation ended. It was an extremely tense interaction and left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. I felt like they weren't respecting boundaries, me avoiding talking about the incident in detail, and they felt I was being unnecessarily dismissive and defensive. Here's where I may be the a-hole. I was quick to take offense as I felt insulted that he would think I wouldn't make an informed enough decision to not come in, and I mentioned the car out front. Am I the a-hole? User comment, you're the a-hole. He just asked you how you went with your car, a normal question you'd ask and you didn't want to discuss? It's just general conversation. Why didn't you want to talk about your flat tire? It's not that big of a deal, it's not as if it was a family crisis or a personal matter. and if you're driving his kids in the car, it's probably important he knows your car is now fine to drive. User comment, "You're the a-hole." All he asked was how things went. Just say things went fine. They are your employer and not your parents. Don't be so rude and act like a sulking 16-year-old. You came off as over-emotional and they were probably concerned about leaving their children in your care. User comment, "You're the a-hole. You had car troubles and they are owed an explanation, and it was rude as hell to dismiss it and say you don't wanna talk about it. If you'd talked to them and tried to explain why from the start, then it's probable they'd not have said what they did. It's a job ultimately, and if you're going to be late or unable to make it, you must speak to your employers." Next one posted by user ReadingBear. Titled, "AITA for trying to get my pregnant manager fired?" So I used to work in a big box liquor store. Like many big box stores, there is a large amount of heavy labor involved with the job. Was never really friends with this manager, but I did my job without much back talk. So the issue came up when this manager found out that she was pregnant. For the safety of her and the kid, she wasn't able to do a lot of the physically intensive work around the store anymore. I was okay with this at the start. I mean, I'm not a monster, who's going to make her risk her or the baby's health? So I was fine covering the stuff like carrying 50 to 100 pound boxes. As she progressed along, her weight limits lowered and I was fine with picking up that slack. The real issues started around the 5-month mark. She would claim fatigue and spend a lot of the day in the office sitting down. Now, while the store manager or assistant store manager were around, this was fine. She would still do little odd jobs that could be completed while sitting down, with the computers. The issue was that once they weren't there, this manager would spend hours hiding away in the office, leaving me to cover like 80 to 90% of the manager duties. I was not getting manager pay. But what really pushed me over the edge was that I would constantly find her sitting back there watching reality TV shows. She was getting paid to be there for 8 hours, and was spending like 3 to 4, at least, of those hours watch RuPaul's Drag Race, Big Brother, other such shows, while I was left to basically run the store. This woman was too tired to cover even the least physically demanding tasks, like print new price tags and replace outdated price tags. Or make a pull list for items that are low, out on the shelf. Basically any task that required her to stand for more than 20 minutes at a time was too much, and us base-level employees were left to pick up the slack. Anyway, the only reason I think I might be the a-hole here, is because I was very clear that I wanted that job. I felt like I had put in my time, and I wanted me a manager position. So AITA. User comment, "You're the a-hole if you're trying to get her fired." What you need to do is bring her behavior to the attention of leadership. They will either make an accommodation for her, or they won't. At that point, it's not your business anymore. User comment, "Not the a-hole. I've never been 5 months pregnant, so I don't know how it feels. However, if she can't do the job, it's unfair of her to expect the lower paid workers to do it for her. It's unfair for her higher managers to allow it." Next one posted by user RA65819. Titled, "AITA if I don't treat my dad very well after he cheated on my mum again?" My dad has a history of cheating. I even have a younger half-brother to prove it. His worst years were when me, 29 male, and my older brother, 31 male, were very young. Eventually, when I was about 3 or 4, my mum threatened to leave. My dad's family, but his mum especially, basically told him, "If she leaves with our grandbabies because of you, then you're dead to us." My dad got sober and stopped cheating, at least he didn't get caught doing it. In high school they had a scare. Mine and my brother's nanny from Brazil was claiming her daughter was my dad's. Honestly, I never found out if it was true. My parents nearly divorced but didn't. Fast forward to 2020 and we found out in March my dad was talking to some woman on Facebook, WhatsApp. It tore my mum apart. Me and my brother lost respect for him, but they decided to work on their marriage. It had already been rocky in the past few years for unrelated reasons, so we basically moved on and tried to heal. On Monday it happened again. My mum had a panic attack. My brother and I were upset and our family had a long conversation about it. However, I am basically not even looking at my dad. I don't want to talk to him, forgive him, have a relationship with him, anything. My mum and brother are somewhat mad at me because he's still your dad and you should still care about him. He didn't cheat on you. But I don't care. He is my dad and I don't hate him, I just don't respect him at all anymore. I made it clear that I am fully on my mum's side and my dad needs to get a lot of help before I can come around. AITA. User comment, not the a-hole. Cheating on his spouse involves the whole family, whether he likes it or not. You're being true to yourself. User comment, I would lose respect for your mother too for showing how be an enabler of this. How much time she wasted, and still, with this garbage. I mean your father. Your brother and her already normalized cheating in their mind. You should try to talk with your mother to divorce this guy. Good luck, not the a-hole. User comment, not the a-hole. I would also let your mum know that you have lost respect for her for tolerating his cheating behavior for so long. Next one posted by user Welland94. Titled, AITA for not giving a second chance to a dying old lady an opportunity to redeem herself? For context. When I was 10, now male 26, I had a cousin, let's call him Robert, male 20 at the time, that came out of the closet as a gay male and life became a hell for him because his father and mother treated him like crap. They didn't kick him out, but a lot of times I think that he would be better that way, as they both beaten him and blamed him for everything ugly that happened, as God was punishing them for having a gay sinner at house. There were extended relatives like her grandmother that just watched in silence and threw a random insult from time to time. My father was the only one kind enough for trying to help him, however in the end he decided to flee to another city alone and without a single penny at his name. He ended prostituting himself for money and got HIV, and then when his parents discovered that he was going to die, tried to be at peace with him. They brought him home, and even the last year he was alive allowed him to bring his boyfriend at Christmas, but it was too late as he died in February next year. Now that I have came out of the closet, people in the family has been trying to redeem themselves with me, saying that they love me and accept me, and it burns my soul because from where I see it they have blood on their hands and it won't wash away. I don't wanna be nobody's second opportunity, and even though I do like not being beaten or insulted just for being gay, this just doesn't feel right. Now this Christmas Robert's sister invited me to hang out. We have never been close, and this time and asked why was the reason, and it turned out that it's because her grandmother, the one that is not shared, it's very ill and wants to meet me and my boyfriend, and I invented an excuse. I don't want nothing to do with their peace of mind. I'm not him and I won't forgive anybody in its place. Is feeling kind of guilty as this woman has never been anything but kind to me, but I am sticking to my guns in this one. So AITA for rejecting the offer to visit this person so that she can be at ease? User comment, not the a-hole. There's a saying, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. His grandmother stood by while he suffered. She only wants to save her reputation, she doesn't give a duck about you. User comment, not the a-hole. It's really weird to see you as a chance to redeem themselves. Honestly, they did what they did and they need to deal with it. They did that to your cousin, not you. She needs to accept what she did. User comment, not the a-hole. You are a person in your own right and should be treated as such. They can't use you to make themselves feel better about the past, and they should feel guilty about what they did. But maybe you could think of their desire to change their behavior as Robert's legacy in a way. Next one posted by user Sonnet Lumiere 2. Titled, WIBTA for not paying landscaper. My recently hired landscaper, who did an excellent job with leaf removal and hanging Christmas lights, asked me last week if he could do our snow removal. He quoted me a price for cleaning the driveway down to the blacktop, the sidewalk in front of the house, the walkway in front of the house, the walkway at the side of the house, and clearing the deck at the rear of the house. He also said they will apply calcium chloride to deal with any residual ice. I said okay. So the nor'easter blows through this week, leaving 6 to 7 of snow in its wake. The morning after, two guys, neither of which was the guy the first had been dealing with, roll up in a pickup truck and start work. Within 1/2 hour, they had come and gone. They didn't touch the side walkway or deck at all. I really wasn't concerned about those tasks not being done per se, but I was concerned that he had promised X and not delivered without letting me know. Neither the front walkway nor driveways were properly cleared. The driveway was patchy with large swatches covered in 2+ of compacted snow. My daughters and I had to go out and shovel and chop ice so we could get the cars out of the driveway. He also used a light dusting of sodium chloride, insufficient to melt any ice but enough to damage any plants it contaminates upon melting, instead of the calcium chloride promised. I texted him with my concerns and he basically tells me that's all he was willing to do and would not return to do the work to spec. WIBTA if I either don't pay the guy or pay him at a reduced rate, no more than 50%? User comment, not the a-hole. I would contact the person you talked with, explain that not all of the work was done and you ended up having to do it yourself. Figure out roughly what percentage of the work was actually done, and come to an agreement to pay for only the work that was actually done. User comment, not the a-hole. I would usually say pay them a reduced rate, but they didn't complete any aspect of the agreed work. User comment, not the a-hole. You contacted him with your concerns. He refused to fix the work. How much did they do? Maybe 25%? I'd pay that at the most. I hope you took pictures before you finished their job. Last one posted by user M. Dodds. Titled, AITA for leaving some trash behind when I moved out. I recently left a highly toxic work environment. This job also provided housing, so your last day in the job is your last day in the house. Period. Upon moving out, I cleaned my space from top to bottom, wiped down ceiling fans, scrubbed baseboards, bleached entire bathroom, vacuumed, mopped, etc. I was packing up my car with my final load of belongings to leave in the dark and in the freezing pouring rain. I said goodbye to my roommates, co-workers and left. The following morning I get an angry text from one of my old co-workers about how all the trash I left behind was an intentional duck you that I was trying to send her. I left behind one paper grocery bag filled with paper scraps and some small shreds of cardboard and a couple of very small boxes. I left them all stacked neatly on the porch where we leave the rest of our recycling trash before it goes to the local dump. We don't have trash pickup in the area. I couldn't take it to the dump because it was after hours when I realized I had some trash left over and there was barely room in my small sedan for me to drive it back. I honestly could not have fit anything else in the car if I'd tried. I meant to tell them I'd left it there but forgot because I was frazzled with the stress of moving. Said co-worker has angrily demanded I apologize to her. I really didn't think leaving behind some paper recycling was this big of a deal. AITA. User comment, not the a-hole. Kinda weird that your co-worker reacted that way, but whatever, you did the right thing. User comment, not the a-hole. Firstly, the place isn't your concern anymore. Secondly, the trash left behind is not something to get mad over cause it's just paper stuff. It can be thrown out literally any time. Just ignore the woman. User comment, everyone sucks here. You should have at least sent a courtesy text about the trash. It's not someone else's job to clean up your mess, even if it's a small amount. That being said, the over-the-top text was uncalled for. A simple, not cool, text about it would have been sufficient, especially since this was unintentional. Either way, you don't live there anymore, so it's not like there is any real reason to remedy the situation. Thanks for listening.